SAGES Stories.
Welcome to today's episode of SAGES Stories, the official podcast of SAGES, the Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons. Please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you can stay up to date with our most recent episode. And enjoy the show. Okay. Welcome to episode 34 of SAGES Stories, where we shine the light on some of SAGES' most impactful leaders. I'm your co-host, Dr. Jenny Shao, joining from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
And I'm Dr. Kevin L. Hayek, still in wonderful Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, so I know we haven't talked about this yet, but it's kind of sad to think that by the time this episode drops, summer will have come and gone so quick again for 2025, especially with the Michigan winters coming up around the corner. I definitely am not ready for that.
Yeah, I try to soak up the sun, but I'm also grateful for changing seasons. I always love the fall. That said, before we jump into today's show, I do want to share some sad news and take a moment just to acknowledge the sudden and tragic loss of a dear friend to many in SAGES and the entire SAGES community and the entire surgical community for that matter, Sean Cleary. Anyone who knew Sean or had the pleasure of working with him knows just how impactful he was to so many. He was, for me, a tremendous resource on the HPB committee, did so much work with us, and we are going to miss him dearly, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family as they continue to grieve this loss.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss, Kevin, and really, honestly, the loss for all who knew him. It's definitely really a reminder to cherish every day we have and also to focus on the important things in life.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for today's episode, we are honored to have Dr. Todd Heniford join us. He is a distinguished surgeon and innovator known to many, if not all of you. He has remarkable contributions to the field through extensive research, mentorship, and leadership. He grew up in South Carolina and pursued his medical education with a passion that propelled him to become a leading figure in minimally invasive surgery and a pioneer in the field of hernia surgery. I often joke that we need adult supervision in that form. It's usually a hernia surgeon, so it's always good to have another hernia surgeon on. After many years as professor in chief of gastrointestinal and minimally invasive surgery at the Carolinas Medical Center, Dr. Heniford recently relocated to Chicago, where he now serves as the director of abdominal wall health and hernia program at Endeavor Health. So we'll be excited to hear about that. He has over 650 publications. Wow. More than 70 prominent surgical research awards, has been instrumental in advancing surgical practices and mentoring the next generation of surgeons, one of whom happens to be one of the co-hosts of SAGES Stories. He is the past president of the America's Hernia Society and has several lifetime and career achievement awards from multiple surgical societies.
And just on a personal note, I really want to add that I've had the honor of working with Todd as one of his fellows, and beyond these amazing accomplishments, I think I just want to mention that he's such a good human being and such a force for good in this world. He's really supported me personally through some tough times, and I know many others out there in the surgical community. He's really someone that I look up to tremendously and who I think of as the true embodiment of a true Southern gentleman. So I'm really excited that we get to talk to him today. And so Todd, with that, welcome to SAGES Stories.
Guys, thank you. That's quite an introduction. And Kevin, I appreciate that about my past accomplishments. And Jenny, I tell you, working with you is the epitome of what has kept me going and gets me up at 4 o'clock in the morning with passion and happiness. I mean, you are a shining star of everything that I could ever want in a fellow.
Oh, thank you. That's such high praise coming from you, as always.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's very sweet.
So we always usually start our episodes kind of by asking our guests to share a little bit about themselves and their background and their journey to becoming a surgeon. So can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing in South Carolina and share some impactful stops along your journey to becoming a minimally invasive surgeon and also a hernia surgeon?
Wow. growing up and I grew up in rural South Carolina. Someone can say, well, is there a metropolitan South Carolina? I guess the answer would still be no. But I grew up in a very small town in a farming community. Yeah, in a farming community in South Carolina. And, I spent my weekends, I was either playing football or another sport. My dad insisted that you played everything, every sport, and just kept you out of trouble. But I was either or that or hunting and fishing. It's I grew up as a quintessential country boy. And we knew we were going to go to Clemson. All the kids went to Clemson. My dad went to Clemson on the GI Bill and played football in the late 1940s after leaving the Navy. So everybody had to go to Clemson. And so
How
it
many
was
were how many were in your family?
7 kids. So
Seven
it's
kids.
yeah, it's so interesting. I played football and and Clemson was an option team. So as a quarterback, I wasn't an option quarterback. I was a drop back quarterback. And so I remember my dad would get up real early in the morning. He was reading a newspaper in front of his face. And on the coffee table, I laid out all the brochures from the different schools that I had taken an official visit to. And I was like, Dad, I'd like to talk to you about which school I'd like to try and play quarterback for. And my dad dropped the newspaper down and said, Son, if you go to Clemson, I'll come watch you, and put the newspaper back up again. And so that was the entire discussion on which college to choose.
Was
Did
that
did he
advice that
play? Oh, go ahead. Did
He
did
played
he? I'm sorry.
it. Yeah, yeah. So
He
my dad he played in the late 1940s and
a
1950 Cotton
quarterback
Bowl.
too?
And no, he played nose guard, just
No.
completely different. And I had a brother who played defensive end and was quite a star defensive end before me, and a sister who was the head cheerleader. And so it just, it's going to be Clemson. I mean, you had no choice. And so, but growing up in that, I had no intention of actually ever going to medical school. I mean, I did mathematical sciences as a major in college because math was easy. Not to ever apply it to anything. I just had to graduate because I wanted to
Wait, I
play
have to just
professional
stop you there
football.
because you said math is easy. I don't think a lot of people would necessarily agree with you there, but what made math easy to you?
I don't know. It's always math always came. It was always the easiest subject for me. Always. I finished like my high school math when I was in sixth grade, so I really went through math very, very quickly. And but you try and get me to learn a foreign language. I mean, I can barely speak English. I guess everybody's got to play a piano. Like heck no. I mean, everybody's got their strengths, but but it's so interesting when you talk about like influencing me. The reason that I went to medical school is because I decided, what else was I going to do as a math major? I was not going to be good enough to play professional football, and so I decided, step two would be in med school. So I signed up and took the MCAT and did well enough to go to medical school, and there you go. It's yeah. I will say that the the mentality of it and the drive to do it was driven a lot by my football coaches and my father. I mean, these guys were, my dad was, these all were young men I should say, these were all men who were very successful when they were young. My dad came out of the Navy, became an entrepreneur, became very successful. A high school coach, in a very young age, was the youngest person in the state to win the state championship in football as a head coach. Danny Ford, my head coach at Clemson, youngest, still the youngest college coach to ever win the national championship. And so they were hard driving as young men, and I think they instilled that in me. And I got
Did
a
you
lot of
get
my
did you get
want.
to play with your brother? Did you guys cross the years? Did you play together or do you
Yeah, he was 7 years older than me. So
oh, okay.
but the crazy thing is, this coaches knew him, the trainers knew him. Are you going to be? Oh, it's another Heniford, and he was such a star. And yeah, I lived in his wake. How about that?
that really definitely explains your worth ethic because I feel like you still work at that level and so hard now. So it seems like some of that worth ethic probably came from some of these early mentors where they were really kind of just teaching you what it meant to be successful. And it feels like that's something you really carried with you throughout your whole career.
I mean, and you can also put, if you had to say who are the five people, or you say, Todd, who are the people that have had the greatest impact, it'd be those three guys. Davis Heniford, Alan McNeil, my high school coach, Danny Ford. Next would be Hiram Polk, who became chairman at the University of Louisville when he was 34 years old, and then Jeff Ponsky, who became a chairman very, very young and made a drove a huge stake in the ground as a young surgeon. I mean, all of were very successful young people, and these guys, they made me pragmatic in my questioning and efficient in my answers, and didn't have a lot of time for BS, and it was good. It was, I mean, I wouldn't give up. Every one of those people really changed the arc of my life.
That's awesome. I think that's a good segue for us to kind of talk about some pivotal moments. You mentioned medical school. It's Medical University of South Carolina. Your stops at Louisville and then eventually Cleveland Clinic. Maybe share some highlights from those three segments of your time.
Yeah, and I think that I never wanted to be a surgeon because surgeons work too hard. I mowed the grass for the only radiologist in our town, and he had a 4-acre yard, and he paid me $20 a week to mow his grass. And I mean, I felt like I was printing damn money. And this guy must make a lot of money. And I saw him a lot, so he wasn't working that hard. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a radiologist. And but I remember that the day that I decided that I had to be a surgeon, Spence Taylor was the chief resident. So Spence was the chairman down at Greenville for a good long time and an amazing surgeon. But he saved this young man's life. And I was a third year medical student. I was doing surgery first because I didn't want to do it. And I'd be better on internal medicine. You play that game. And this guy came in and had a bad trauma. And this kid was going to die. I mean, this is the first time I ever smelled like a human that I said, this is not going to go well. And I was terrified. And Spence, as a chief resident, rolled in there, had everybody back up, took him up to the operating room, saved this kid's life. And 7 days later, he walked out of the hospital after a horribly ruptured spleen. I was like, I have to do that. But I also was Spence Taylor. That guy
So
he's such an amazing leader.
so you were third year, you were doing it. So it was probably you said early on your first rotation. I
Yeah.
I'm a clerkship director, and I you're like you know the dream, where someone comes in, they're like, I'm internal medicine all the way, and they catch something, and it's fun because I usually have one or two a year that do that say the same exact thing you said. I'm going to do this, I'm going to get it out of the way, and they're like, at the end of the rotation they say, man, something clicked, and I think I want to do this for life, and that's awesome. I think that's one of those nuggets that
Sometimes
probably a lot of people don't know about you.
yeah,
Well,
so I'll just say that I would just say for Spence, I don't, there are times when I didn't know where to really thank him or curse him, but uh, but he really influenced me. How about that?
What's so interesting is we've talked to a couple of people recently where it's like a very common theme where people don't really feel like they're going to go into surgery, but then they find surgery as kind of their calling. And so that's definitely one of the common themes we've noticed. So it's kind of actually not surprising to hear you say that, right, Kevin? I feel like the past couple of people we've talked to, I
Yeah.
think myself included, have all thought that we were not going to be surgeons. And then just ended up loving the specialty for a variety of, very similar reasons.
Oh, absolutely. If you listen to probably all the episodes, I would say about a third, a half are like, they want to do something completely different. And we'll touch on our previous guest in a little bit, who's a good buddy of yours. So we'll touch on that a little later. But
And I think that goes to is that you can't tell people what they're going to do or what they're going to like. You have
yeah,
to lead them to it.
yeah,
It's by example. People, and young people, and even not as young people, they want to become what they see as excellence. They see excellence, and that's what they want to be. And that was Spence
yeah.
Taylor. He was the best resident in the hospital, and it wasn't close in my young eyes. And so I had to be Spence Taylor.
That's
So
awesome.
Well, so
you
honestly,
mentioned like
go ahead.
I know. I was gonna say you just like mentioned like other things that kind of led you into being a surgeon or what you were going to do. And so I was at the University of Louisville, and I wanted to do surgical oncology perhaps because everybody wants to be a cancer surgeon. Everybody wants to take out big cancers like Kevin, and save lives and be a hero. I mean, like Kevin, I see your cape you're wearing right now, Kevin, on the podcast, and it's
We're not supposed
fantastic.
to share
But it's
those types of things.
but
Yeah, we're not supposed to. That's supposed to. It's audio only. People shouldn't know that I have a cape.
the
Yeah, he wears it
but
every episode, guys.
so to choose minimally invasive surgery, it was actually frowned upon. I trained at the University of Louisville, at a time when minimally invasive surgery was just starting to take off. And there were many of the very influential surgeons who really frowned on, are you going to do laparoscopic pancreatectomies? You're going to do laparoscopic, surgery? I mean, and so when I decided to do minimally invasive surgery, it wasn't my choice. My wife had wanted to do a fellowship, and so she matched at the Cleveland Clinic. And so I came to the Cleveland Clinic looking for a job. I had hat in hand looking for a job, and Michelle Gagne had just moved there. I mean, it was just breadcrumbs for your future laid out in front of you here. And so I fell in the interview with Michelle. He hired me as a fellow. And then I was full on laparoscopy. And this is right. I mean, we did some of the first big laparoscopic procedures in the world. And we went on to publish about laparoscopic adrenalectomy and the hanging spleen and distal pancreatectomies. And we did loads of foregut and we did lots of gastrectomies. And so when they were not being done in the country. And so you're talking about like, and I think one thing, and I can see what you guys think about this, but so much of, and we can keep like talking about like what has inspired me, but I think part of it is whatever's laid in front of you, you just got to be passionate about it. Every day you got to show up, put your head down, and be truly passionate about helping people, about driving your team, and you'll end up inspiring yourself and inspiring your team. And hell, you might as well do that and just have a good time at it. And so, yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I think that a lot of people try to figure out like what they're supposed to do. It's obviously become a huge topic and with AI now kind of been threatening a lot of jobs. And I think ultimately you have to find something that gets you up at for you 4 a.m. For me, it's 5. I'm not a 4, but I'm a 5. I get up at 5. But if you can't do that, then it doesn't matter what you're going to do. You're going to be miserable.
Yeah, I
yeah,
hate to break it to you, but I'm like a 6 o'clock in the morning person.
Okay, no,
I'm not a
that's fine.
morning person, guys. I can like
Yeah,
stay up
that's
super
fine.
late,
So we got
but
4, 5, and 6 here. So that's pretty good. That's pretty
well,
yeah.
good.
but you also are smarter, and you type like 95 words a minute. So
So
so by the time by
you're hunting
6:30,
pecking?
what
Are you still a
is
hunting
that?
pecker?
By what I have typed, it's by 6:30. You have typed by 6:30 as well. And so let's just
That's why
go
you
with
have your
that.
fellows do your notes for you. That's the real trick of the trade is outsourcing your notes to somebody else.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think, what you're saying really rings true because sometimes, when people ask you the question, where do you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 10 years, but sometimes it's really nice to just focus on the present and focus on the things that you want to do well and that you're passionate about. And sometimes some of this can really come next. And so I think you've sort of mentioned some key mentors like Michelle Gagne. And, one of the common themes we've really noticed among many of our Sage Stories guests have been really their impactful mentors on their career, but also their ability to mentor and sponsor others. One thing that I feel like people really say about you is that you're an incredible mentor, and I feel that way personally as well. And you've been awarded Mentor of the Year multiple times. And I think it's no small feat, honestly, that 8 of your prior trainees have been elected president of the American Hernia Society, which is actually quite incredible. I don't know if anybody else has those bragging rights. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy on mentorship, sponsorship? How do you continue to inspire your trainees and sort of propel them forward in their careers?
Jenny, I mean, you caught me when you were my fellow. You and Ava, it was an amazing year. And we had Charbel in the lab. We had Sully come into the lab. We had the two of you guys, and
So
you
your
just made it.
favorite fellowship year
Yeah.
for, just for the record, for all the other clinical fellows that are out there.
Uh-oh, this
But, I
might
mean,
this might start a fight. I don't know.
uh,
That's okay, I'm ready for
We might have to edit
uh,
this one out. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
yeah, but I mean, there are years and just make it so easy. I mean, just make it absolutely so easy to be successful. But when you ask that, I've had conversations before about like mentorship and how you grow as a mentor. And I think there is growth as a mentor as well as growing your mentees. And Coach Saban said once, he talked about early in his career, he was too transactional. And I totally get that. When I was young, and I talked to Wolfgang Reinpold about this uh, just recently, and a German surgeon who's a very famous German surgeon. And I could celebrate when I was young. I could celebrate the highs, but I really had problems with the lows, with the losses. And and that is when you get the greatest chance to teach. And if you don't teach with the losses, and again, I'll quote Coach Saban, in that you'll crush morale. You know, it's when I stopped counting, my own publications, where I really became the best mentor possible. I went for like 5 or 6 years without putting a single line on my CV, and we were publishing a ton. When I sat back and looked at it, I was like, that was the transition point when it was no longer about me. I was training fellows to write papers. Yeah, we were make you guys go into our database. We have 25,000 prospective patients in our database, almost 18,000 hernia patients. And you guys go in and make me a better surgeon. Yeah, absolutely, you do that. But my real teaching, one of my real effects, I hope that people will say, is teaching people how to do science and how to teach people how to be a better academic surgeon. But the mark in my career is when I stopped counting.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I want to piggyback off that. I think your philosophy is clearly one of sharing and making sure that you're bringing up your team. You've been such a pioneer and innovator in minimally invasive surgery, not just in hernia surgery. And one of the things that I really admire is how you've evolved, you've pivoted, you've elevated your clinical practice to continually improve and polish the diamond, so to speak. Talk a little bit about you alluded to this, but how do you use your research to drive your changes in clinical practice, especially when you have, 650 odd publications? Seems like it would be hard to integrate all of that into your practice to make continual changes.
and I think the key is what you just said, continual changes. Once you make so you get more than one abstract, more than one paper when you're studying something. You study something, you make a change, you get another abstract, and then you continue to track that forward. And and one of the things that you have to do as a young surgeon growing into an older surgeon is, if you're going to do quality improvement, if you're going to track your data, is you have to be very honest about it. When I was young, I wanted to bury all my complications. And I would say, that's it. I gave an antibiotic in clinical. I'm trying to prevent an infection, or you could choose any sort of excuse you might have for anything. But we early on hired data collectors that surgeons had no access to the data whatsoever. And then also at that point, Kevin, I knew I meant it. We will not change the data, period. If a data, we have trained data collectors, and now they've tracked thousands upon thousands of patients, and you have to be able to say, and I wouldn't say that you're not saying you're wrong, you did something wrong. What you have to say is that you can improve. And so it's a different mindset. Everyone has complications. Everyone has problems. I mean, the patients come in a lot of different packages. And so, but being able to learn from it, you have to be extremely honest. You have to give yourself a report card. You have
So
to
true.
strive. Yep. So without an honest report card, you will not make successful changes. And it's really difficult to do that. But again, Kevin, and it's one of those times like when I broke through to being a better surgeon, a better academic, and a better teacher is when I let my research, when I let Jenny Shao say, look, we could do this better. here's what you did. Here are the problems. This is what we need to implement to implement change to do better. And that's how we, honestly, and you talk about like the research awards that we've won, it was very kind of you to mention it. The majority of them are in quality improvement. And we said, we did this, and then now we've done this to change, and then we
Yeah.
track that. Yeah. And so I mean, I can give you an example of like something that I was a big believer in, and it hurt my feelings to write something separate. Like we were a big believer in lightweight polypropylene mesh. I mean, the early 2000s, all we had was Marlex, with Gore-Tex, and that's about it. And so the guys in Germany, in Aachen, Germany, they came up with this lightweight mesh concept. We jumped right on that. But we did studies. We did, Alfie Carbonella did beautiful studies in the lab. Will Cobb did beautiful studies in animal models. We demonstrated it would cause less infection with a lightweight mesh than a heavyweight mesh. And with a 6-month study in pigs, we demonstrated it was plenty
Oh,
strong
I
for the human
remember.
abdomen.
I
Yeah,
used a lot of this data in my practice in the beginning because the
and
H
I
I joke HPB was actually hernia pancreatobiliary my first couple of years out. It was not wasn't
You're a hernia
hepatic.
surgeon,
So
Kevin?
I was a
Wow.
hernia
Did we
surgeon.
ever
Yeah,
get
the
to hear
H
you say
stood for
that?
hernia because as a
and,
new surgeon, you're just doing hernia. So I used a lot of your data.
and so but what happened was when you track these patients, when you get out to about 18 months, the outcomes were the same. But once you hit 19 to 20 months, you began to see the lightweight meshes fracture. And
Mm-hmm.
they fractured at a great rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had Kira Huntington actually presented at the American College of Surgeons, like a study of over 900 patients where lightweight mesh, you can't use it in the ventral abdomen. And so what I had to come up with to tell my fellows is what you need to do is drive a deep stake in the ground about what you think is correct. And you got to base it in science. Then
Yeah.
you study it and you talk about that. Then you study it. Then you figure out you're wrong. You talk about it for 5 years, you figure out you're wrong. Then you talk about it for 10 years, and that's half a career. And so
You're already, and then you got 50 papers out of it. So you're right
boom.
you're on your way to professor right there.
Yeah. But that was one of the first big things that we did, one of the first groups in the country to ever write about it. And it was incorrect.
Yeah, I
And so,
remember.
and even now, we just actually looked at uh, like 3,400 open, totally all pre-peritoneal ventral hernia repairs. The average size is about 250 square centimeters, blah, blah, blah. You know what the number one risk factor for failure is? Lightweight mesh.
Oh my gosh. I thought it
And
was
Wow.
it is
PGY. I
haunting
thought it
me.
was PGY4 scrubbed in. That's the data I always use when I had a
I,
PGY4 in there. I said, there's this data that shows that if PGY4 scrubs, there's a failure rate. So now I have to say it's
I,
lightweight mesh.
it is now it haunts me. It is like what is it, the the ghost in the Dickens novel carrying around the chain, the ball and chains.
Oh yeah, a Ghost of Christmas Past.
It that
That's
is
lightweight
that
mesh for you. I love it.
that's lightweight
PG,
mesh.
uh,
I'm dragging that ball and chain with me my whole career. If anybody ever wants, if I think I'm smart about something, what anybody should do is raise their hand and say lightweight mesh. Oh,
I'm gonna do that the next time I'm on a panel with you. That's gonna be kind of
that is great.
my
Lightweight mesh. It's
go-to.
your kryptonite.
But
it's
you know,
yeah, it's
I feel like hearing you talk, one of the things that really strikes me is, sometimes I feel like as academic surgeons, a lot of what we hold on to is sort of ego. And it sounds like to me that when you really sort of let that go and you focus on your patients, your mentees, and you really just try to drive change forward and you stop caring so much maybe about some of these other things is really when you sort of evolve your passion. And I totally agree with you because I think a lot of times, we think research is only meaningful if we're publishing like positive studies or a better way to do something. But I definitely think like these negative studies where you're proving something wrong or you're kind of proving a concept that we thought was right was maybe not the best way forward is also equally as impactful and maybe even more so.
I mean, I tell my fellows and I tell the young surgeons and I tell older surgeons, look, you know, there will be progress in medicine, and
Mm,
whatever you have written will either get better or be disproven. And so what you have to do is just lean in and embrace it. I
yeah.
mean, you want things to change. There
Yeah.
is no hard fact that's not going to change in medicine, or at least we hope not. And so, yeah, just accept it and you'll get better.
And that's I think we all can get better. I think that's a good point. Like doesn't matter what stage you're in. I mean, I think early on that's like our whole focus is getting better every year. And then you hit this point where you're out a couple of years. And, I think there are really, I feel like there's two sort of branch points in surgery where someone's just gets set in their ways, and they're going to do that regardless. And then there's a group that are open to recognizing that there could be a better way. And I'll tell you who showed me that is one of the same people that was instrumental in your life, and that's Jeff Bonsky. He was always
Yeah.
that way. He lived that mantra where he was like, I'm always going to try to prove that what I did 5 years ago is not the right thing to do anymore. I need to change it. And he did that till he retired. He did it till he retired. So that's a great message.
And I think
And
that
it
embodies
doesn't
kind of the spirit of SAGES,
go.
right? Like I think that's why all of us are part of this organization. That's why all of us kind of strongly believe in what we do, is because we really strongly believe in this evolution and that we can continually be better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
So on this topic of seeing like all these evolving techniques, you're clearly, sometimes deemed the godfather of hernia surgery, which I think is totally true. You're a past president of the American Hernia Society. And you've been around for a while and you've seen all these evolving techniques and changes in hernia surgery. This is probably a question you kind of get a lot, but what are you the most excited about in the next 5 years, for this specialty? Do you see any particular way that the specialty is evolving? Just would love to kind of pick your brain and get your thoughts.
Yeah, and we were, Kevin, you're talking about like, embracing change and development of new techniques and all the other things. That I think that one of the things that you also have to be very careful of is that you don't jump in too quickly into things.
Very good
I think
point.
one of
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the problems, surgeons, and believe it or not, surgeons have ego. And as one of my professors used to say, you have to have, if you're going to do the things we do in the operating room to people, you have to have ego. You would never want a surgeon that doesn't have it. And so, but the consideration of, you know, often we'll have surgeons, a new technique comes out, and I could use the robot in this, and you could say you're doing the robotic hernia repair. We had so many people jumping into the pool all at the same time. And, and quite honestly, what would certainly work better, and it's so much easier for me to say this now, of course, for the mature practice and that sort of thing, is that you need to let a few really good surgeons jump into the pool and figure out how to swim in this, and then introduce it to us. But as surgeons, we don't want to be left behind. And then also, I mean, you could fall back to things like, single site surgery that never worked and didn't make sense. And I mean, there's a lot of things that you can go down a wrong path. But you mentioned, so Jenny, about what I'm excited about. The thing I am, and I don't think it's close. The thing I am most excited about is about the people. And so, you could kind of list what are the things you're excited about, technical changes, scientific changes, how much we understand about quality of life, beginning to understand about quality of life. And and I'll say, and then you could say, is this, what of those evokes the greatest change, the culture change for hernia repair? And I would eliminate all the things I first mentioned, and I would circle, culture change. It's actually the culture change, and it's about it. We now, when you have young surgeons who say, "What do you want to do with your life?" I want to do AWR. I mean, when they've shortened it to 3 letters, you've made it. And so, we've got, and we'll have, the last time we went through the fellowship, council match, we had over 140 people apply for one position.
Wow.
And so,
That's
yeah, so
impressive.
yeah, so young people are voting with their feet.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it came right, how it came about was, we are really taking ourselves seriously. I mean, to say you were a hernia surgeon when I was your age, Jenny, I mean, if people were like, "Oh, so you don't know how to operate," would be the first thing that they would think about. And so now there's a mindset among hernia surgeons that you look at the type of cases that you do, look at the type of cases that we all do here. The other considerations apply the application of science. We're really starting to apply science. We're really, what we know about anatomy is so much better. And I think the other considerations is that we have approachable heroes. You have people that are out there who are I mean, you can take and you can name just about in so many of the people that you know, Jenny, that you met during our in your fellowship who are still your very good friends, who reach down to young people. You could walk up to David Chin in any meeting and talking to him about hernia repair, or Wolfgang, who I mentioned, or John Fisher, or Mike Rosen, or Yuri Nowitzki, or Igor Belyansky, and the first thing they do is turn and give you their time.
Yeah, that's
They,
very
they, like these massive surgeons who have changed abdominal reconstruction in the world, and they are I mean, and young people just flock to them.
Yeah.
And so the combination, and then also one last thing is that you now can become board certified. So there is a separation that you can achieve. You can become a master in this and actually become board certified through the European Board of Surgery in
Mm.
abdominal wall surgery.
Wow.
And so, what am I most excited about is the people, and this influx of young people who are going to, I'm going to just want to sit back when I retire, sit back and kind of read the proceedings of the American Hernia Society with a bourbon on the back porch, going, "Wow, they have
Wow.
really doubled up on everything I ever accomplished."
Well, I think that's a great segue into SAGES, and one of the things we want to talk about is your involvement in SAGES, and you've been in very active for years, and fun fact is that we just had your buddy Adrian Park on the show last episode, and so for me it's like back to back, you and Adrian. I met both of you in Sedona in 2011 when you were running the fellows course, and that was my really a very impactful year for me, doing my MIS year and having you guys run that. So I know that you ran that course, and so I want to hear maybe a little bit about how that started, but also your overall involvement in SAGES and how you got introduced.
That's so great that you talked to Adrian. Adrian and I were like real partners, even though we've never truly been in the same institution. We were partners in crime for about 20 years. And so one of the things that I thought we were doing pretty good at when I was a young attending surgeon, was training people. I thought we were doing really well training people, but people would come out of the residency and not know really anything about life. And how do you retire? How do you pay for your kid's school? How do you choose a job? Tell me about contracting. When you go on an interview, what's important? What do you need to see? Who do you need to talk to? Um, it was, I mean, malpractice. I mean, all of those things. And so I came to Adrian. I thought about this idea. I came to Adrian. He immediately said, "That's fantastic. We should do this." And I went to, and W.L. Gore's who sponsored it. And I went to W.L. Gore, and I was going to go to multiple companies, and and Adrian had kind of laid out, his thoughts. And I'll tell you, he is such a bright human being. And so he had laid out, and he expanded. This all wasn't my idea, of course. That Adrian really helped grow this. And but we went to W.L. Gore, and W.L. Gore said, "Well, we'd like to do all of it. We don't want another company to do this." And we did it for 15 years,
Yeah,
and it
I
was.
feel so blessed that I was part of that. I know that a lot of the MAS fellows listening didn't get that experience. I know it got rebooted in wonderful Cleveland, Ohio. It's a little different than Sedona, Arizona, with a lock-in where you guys wouldn't let us go out. We had to stay in and
there
play
was a
video games. And
lock-in.
oh yeah, we got locked in, but we had video games and foosball. Are you any better, Todd? Are you still? Can I still beat you in foosball? I don't know.
I'd have to give you a little. You'd have to have a little more beer probably, and me a little less, and then let's do it. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a
no,
lock-in,
it
Jenny, but
was
it was
it.
great food, and we had foosball and like what was it? Some sort of like rocket
We
tart.
we we had rock guitar. I mean, it was just
They
like
weren't suffering.
wild.
Let's
No, no,
just
no.
say.
Well, we were not suffering, but they just they wanted a bunch of knucklehead surgeons just kind of sticking together and
Yeah,
not disturbing the natives, so to speak.
I honestly
sneaking
feel
out.
like this
Yeah.
wasn't around when I was
Sneaking
a
out.
fellow because I would have loved to have
Oh
been
yeah.
a part of the course. I mean, honestly, like some of the topics that you listed, I still kind of know nothing about as an early attending. So I think some of these things are still things that I'm sure many listeners have questions about. So we'll maybe have to talk to you about rebooting it at some point because I would still love to kind of hear about some of these things.
Well, perhaps that's one of the things that you guys should do with through Sages is actually do this in memoriam. Actually do, and not just a podcast, but actually show the slides. And so you could
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
I tell you what, some of the guys who and women who gave some of the best lectures on various topics, I could give those to you guys. But I'll tell you, I think it'd be gold. I
Oh,
really
that
do.
would be gold. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I learned so many concepts that kicked off my career.
I mean, you have Chuck Mabry telling you how to invest and what to invest in
Hmm.
and how to pay for
Hmm.
your kids. I mean, that guy
I was
is
broke.
just so
I
brilliant.
never really could start it at that point. Now it would be much better now. Chuck, I'm like, Chuck, I am like I'm on fumes right now, but I know eventually it's going to be important. So it might be good to see those slides now because it would actually help me.
Actually, one of the things that we did, Kevin, is we actually had Chuck come and give talks to our residents. So he actually
Yeah,
came in and he spent a couple of hours with our residents, and he was again just brilliant. Yeah,
that's
but
awesome.
Sages. So I look at what I just said about the American Hernia Society and the change in the American Hernia Society and how we have really kind of sucked in young people into the American Hernia Society. That's what Sages did when I was young. I mean, I was on the board for 6 years when I was a young surgeon, and I'll blame and thank Jeff Ponsky for a lot of that and those things. But they brought in they Sages was an extremely attractive organization for young surgeons, and so and again back then, like even to say you were a minimally invasive surgeon, some older surgeons thought it was great. Some older surgeons thought, oh, you're just working through with chopsticks, and so you don't think that now, but it was at times you faced
Laser
ridicule back then.
surgeons. You do that
Yes.
laser surgery.
And you said it just the
Don't say
right
that
way,
though.
Kevin. That laser
That
surgery. You
laser
know,
surgery. You're doing that keyhole
right.
laser surgery.
But sages drove science around minimally invasive surgery. Sages, had your back as a minimally invasive surgery, both in the community as in academic surgeons. And laparoscopy started more in the community than it did in academics.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that sages protected people, sages
Hmm.
educated people, and so sages became extremely powerful. And when I say powerful, powerful in the way that the way you would protect someone. And so I like Sages was home to me as a young surgeon. And so, you talk about like who my greatest friends were. I mean, you got Lee Swanstrom and Adrian Park and Phil Shower and these guys who, I mean, we started the Fellowship Council and after and we talked about it at Sages. So it was like six of us who started the Fellowship Council.
Wow.
And yeah, everybody was part of Sages. And I don't know, some of the older surgeons really, I mean, I was like Jeff Ponsky being a mentor for me. I, that guy that guy is brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
He didn't do the Fellowship Council, but but that, he
He had his
played a role in
fingers
it
in it.
just by
Yeah.
his influence with us. Absolutely. With his influence with us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
The
awesome.
Sages was, yeah. Yeah. It grew like, um, I mean, I know the percentage would have been very high when I was a young surgeon and put us, it was a place for us to come and feel welcome.
Yeah, I love that. And I think as a young surgeon, I still feel like Sages really feels that way to me now. And so I'm really excited for it to sort of really continue to inspire other people. So I'm going to change the topic a little bit. And so I think you knew this question was coming. So for all of us that know you pretty well, we know that you're a big bourbon lover. And so I think all of us are curious, including our listeners, about some of your bourbon passion. And of course, you have a charity called Barrel Aged Charities. So I want to give you some space to tell us a little bit about that and maybe about some of your other hobbies.
Yeah. So the thing about bourbon, um, I think whiskey for the most part is a learned taste. Yeah, I don't think you grow up enjoying whiskey. But I liked wine. And once I
Hmm.
could afford wine, to kind of learn about wine, the nuances of wine, when we taste wine, like we will write down three flavors that we taste, and then we'll go around and talk about it. And it makes you a better wine drinker just to be able to expand your palate. And you can learn this. You absolutely can learn. You can be a better wine drinker. Bourbon is very much the same. It has some of the same nuances, the same flavors. And and so I got into that just I don't know. It's my dad was a whiskey drinker, and so after I lost my father, I kind of fell in, honestly, I kind of fell into it. The smell of it reminded me of him. And so why charity? And why barrel aged charities? Well, one, there's nothing that's going to get you up and get you going to do something extra you're not passionate about. And so why not mix two passions? And so, barrel aged charities is about prostate cancer. And over 90% of bourbon drinkers are men. And so it tends to fall. I know you drink bourbon, Jenny, and an amazing sense of taste. But 90% of men. And so why did I do prostate cancer? I mean, we just lost Hans Jekyll last week. And Hans
I
Jekyll
know
was a
that. Oh my
huge,
gosh.
yeah. So Hans, had a huge impact on my life. And I could
Yeah,
tell you
I
it's a couple
saw
of
that.
Hans. I mean, the guy had more randomized prospective trials that truly impacted the world of surgery, from transplant to transfusion to colorectal cancer. I mean, he really impacted the world. And there's not a practicing surgeon on the planet that doesn't do something that Hans made possible and demonstrated the science of. And so he died of prostate cancer.
Yeah,
And
so sad.
one of my very good friends has just died of prostate cancer,
Mm.
and two more have metastatic prostate cancer. But
Wow.
also, so in 2012, they changed the screening for prostate cancer. They said it's an old man's disease. If you're going to die of it, you can live with it for a long time. You'll die of it as an old man, and that's just not true. You will have some that will live with that have a variant that you can live with it for a good while, and before you develop, bone mets and are miserable and die of it. You know, but and since they changed the screening, and you almost have to ask for a prostate screening exam now, just a PSA. And so between 2017 and 2023, the chance of dying of prostate cancer has gone up 29%. The chance of presenting with metastatic prostate cancer has gone up 41%. And you know who cares? Nobody cares, because men are dumb. I mean, it's almost like if we don't want to talk about it. It's almost like breast cancer was. And
True.
again,
It's a true story,
uh,
actually.
with breast cancer in the 1970s, 80s, women wouldn't talk about it. It was defeminizing. Men going to talk about, like, you all the problems associated with prostate cancer. They just don't, and they won't.
Mhm.
You take it's so. And then if you're African American, your chance of dying of prostate cancer in this country is 2.5 times higher than if you're white, and nobody talks about it. And you have
Mm.
to forgive me, please. I mean, I've had sisters who've had breast cancer, and it was tough, and they survived. And so I'm not taking anything away from breast cancer, but the same number of men, and same number of women who get breast cancer, men get prostate cancer. Same number of women who die of breast cancer, men die of prostate cancer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
how and so our biggest thing is disparities. And
Mm.
uh, we've done studies in this and won a national research award with that, in what's been sponsored by Barrel Age Charities. We've worked with Vic Patel and done a couple of
Wow,
other studies with him. And then
that's great.
what we're doing now is we're working through, when I was at Atrium Health, we're working through Atrium Health and the vice dean for disparities there, and we are just beginning doing our screening in our region down in North Carolina. And if you look at Charlotte, it's a very wealthy city. It's the second largest financial center in the country, but there's this upside down horseshoe in Charlotte where people there's the wealth and education and access to care is very desperate. And so we are focusing in that area. We are going out into the community. We now have it organized, where Integralis Charities is paying for this, go organized, where we can go out, do teaching, screening, draw the blood, spin the blood, take it to the hospital, and it's all going to be processed on campus. And then we developed a medical home for them, for the patients. And oh, by the
That's
way, we're also
fantastic.
going to check. Do they need lung cancer screening, colon cancer screening? Do you have a family doctor? And I'll give Nadine Barrett, who is the vice dean at Wake Forest, she is a boss. Golly, do I love that woman. She can go. I mean, she has so much passion. I mean, but give her a lot of oomph to help us push this through. Sometimes you need somebody. I'm not a urologist. I'm just an
Right.
advocate. And but so Advocate Health, this massive hospital system, it was about lung cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancer. They've now added prostate cancer as their big four, and it came from
Awesome.
this push. And so
That's
anyway,
fantastic.
that's it. So why prostate cancer? I mean, I have three friends that right now with metastatic prostate cancer,
Mm,
and they should have been screened.
mm.
And so it's about education and big disparities. And we're also have now given out scholarships for rising to graduating high school students. They don't have to go to college; they can go to trade school or whatever they want. But kids we're giving 4 scholarships out a year
Wow. What do they do with the money? What's the scholarship for? Research
for
or?
education. So we do research. Our money is for research. It's also for this community work that we're doing, and also the scholarships to kids to either go to college or for trade school.
I mean, it's tough for me to imagine that you have 24 hours in a day. It seems like you have like maybe three or four more than the rest of us with all what you've done. We did hear that you get up at 4. What time do you go to bed?
Typically about 10:30, somewhere around
Okay,
there.
so it's really that's just so cool. It's a really that's an awesome. Is it a nonprofit then? Is nonprofit?
It,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, we started a nonprofit 2.5 years ago.
Wow. That's
And
so
so
Yeah.
cool.
I guess just out of curiosity, because I also am not a urologist and I don't really know this, but what are the screening recommendations for prostate cancer? So for like missing all of this, then, I guess my next question is how should I advocate for my patients? I mean, like I do a lot of inguinal hernias, so obviously in that space, I see a lot of patients post prostatectomy. But sometimes, I also see a lot of patients who have like, difficulty urinating, and then I check if they've had a PSA, and then I sort of have their primaries order one. I mean, I'm not doing any prostate exams in my office, obviously, for various reasons. But I mean, like, what are the screening recommendations? Is there something as general surgeons that we should be doing for our patients when we see them, especially like, this inguinal hernia population, I think is kind of easy access for us.
Yeah, so if you look at the number of men, so you're going to have 9% of men are going to develop prostate cancer. But if you have a family history of prostate cancer, that can go up to 50% just by having a first generation, first degree relative. And if you have more than one first degree relative that prostate cancer, I mean, you have to seriously consider that you're going to develop prostate cancer. And so, currently, if you're like over the age of 70, they recommend no screening. You'll have 70-year-olds who are really, really healthy and they're going to live to be in their 90s. And then indeed, in middle-aged men, you really have to ask for it. When you look at the recommendations, you have to ask for a prostate screening exam. And one of my very good friends, he has his father and his uncle had prostate cancer, and he was like one of his family doctor was trying to dissuade him from it, but he should
Mhm.
be aggressively screening him. And so, but anyway, it's the family doctors are doing what they've been instructed to do, and what it, the organizations within this country and the government are telling them to do. But
Well,
if you have
that's
a
a
family
great,
history,
great message.
40 years old, yeah,
Yeah.
and then at 50, certainly by 50, and maybe even 40, yeah, if you don't have a family history.
I'm going to make my husband get a prostate screening.
I think
I'll be like,
I think
seeing
if I
in
let my wife
person.
listen to this one, she's gonna be, see, I've been telling you, Kevin, this is you even got your podcast guest telling you you gotta get up on this stuff. So it's a great message and certainly hit the nail on the head about how men often don't pay attention to warning signs and don't pay attention to their health as much as women do. We know that that's well
Yeah,
established.
and that's why we do some of the disparities work. We actually have to talk to. I mean, our plan is to to
Talk to
talk
the
to the
wife.
ladies and yeah, talk to the women. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're near our conclusion, but we have a
Yep.
favorite segment, which is the "We Are the Sages" segment.
We are the world. We are the world. We are the sages. We are the sages. Sing it, everybody. We are the ones who make you brighter days. So let's start treating. Have you had a good time tonight? There's a choice we make. We got a lot more coming. We are dancing.
And for this, we would love to hear your most memorable Sages moment.
Um, well, I won the Young Researcher Award. I was totally surprised and won the Young Researcher Award for SAGES when I was a young surgeon. And that really, I think, you know, kicked me into another gear. Having the opportunity to do that, to be recognized for that when I'd been out of my fellowship for like 3 years, really
That's really
highly,
amazing.
highly motivating. I'll tell you, it didn't feel like I had made it. It actually, uh, it really highly motivated me. No question about it. And I will say one other thing is, a few years ago, I was in the back of the room, and on the panel, uh, there was a moderator than four of my previous fellows on the stage. And I guess this fits me more as a mentor than it just being SAGES, but it happened in SAGES. And I was standing in the back of the room, and the room was just completely packed. And this is a few years ago when hernia sessions really started to become super popular. And somebody came over to me. I'm leaning against the wall in the back, and somebody came over to me and said, "Man, you should be up there." And I'm like, "Yeah, in the
Yeah.
best way possible."
Wow. Yeah.
It was I just
Proud papa. A proud papa
well, I don't know
moment.
about proud papa, but it's
Well,
you know
proud
if you can't
mentor. Yeah.
if you can't get like I mean like emotional over that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's yeah, so it's good. But thank you guys for having me. Very
Yeah,
kind.
I love that. No, thank you so much for being here today. I guess before we let you go, we do have one last question. So we sort of wanted to end this episode on the subject of innovation and adaptation. And so as somebody who's, continuously driven innovation in your practice and, adapting to changing environments and technologies, how do you continue to stay so relevant and ahead of the game? I feel like you're always thinking about what's coming next and what the newest innovation is, and your research is always so on point. So, any advice you would give to some of the young, inspiring surgeons who are listening to this podcast?
Well, I think that one of the things I would tell a young, inspiring surgeon about aspiring surgeon for about this is, as far as leaning into new technology, I would lean on a person who has plowed a fertile field for a long time before you take a leap. And what I mean by that is lots of bad operations. Most good operations have already been discovered. There are some more bad operations we can discover and do, or even techniques. And so before you take a leap into so the people who should lead this should have a very fertile field and as far as they have a lot of experience, they've done well, they've had problems and done different techniques. And then they'll like guide a young surgeon into, yes, I think you should lean into this or not. And uh, and it is a good young surgeon's game, I will say. You need to have people who will get out in technology and teach us how to do it. Very good surgeons who can lead it, or perhaps mid-career. But it's a younger surgeon's game to do that, to do those things. I would say, but I wouldn't leap without. I mean, that's I think one of the big reasons to have a forward-thinking mentor.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, on behalf of Jenny and the Sages Stories podcast audience, I want to thank you for spending your hour with us. I think it was an amazing story, and I'm sure it will inspire our listeners. we will put some links in our show notes to your charities and maybe some recommendations for prostate cancer screening as well. I think that would be a helpful thing, especially for the men who are listening.
We can do some recommendations for bourbon too, if you want.
And
Yeah.
Let's actually end with
That's
that. That actually seems like a better end. Okay, so what are some recommendations for bourbon? And maybe give some settings for them too. I'm sure you
I
have
like the settings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Yeah.
Let's go.
top 5.
So, okay. All right. Top 5. So if you made me only drink 5 bourbons, so one would be an OWA, the Red Label Weller, old antique.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
it's low proof, 107 proof.
Is that low? 107?
That's low.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay, sorry. You don't drink enough.
And if you can find a store pick, which means so to make Weller, they dump a lot of barrels together. They get the taste they want, and then they bottle lots of bottles. But if you can find a single barrel OWA, amazing. And it is super approachable, very sweet. I'm a big, so Mark Carter is sponsored a charity. And I knew Mark Carter because I liked his bourbon first. His father died of prostate cancer. And so so you can go to Old Carter Americans. If you can find an Old Carter American, these are 99% corn whiskey. And typically they're somewhere between 14 and 16 years old. And they are like my favorite whiskey of all time is Old Carter American Batch 5.
Okay.
Favorite whiskey of all time. Another would be, so if people go to the American Hernia side, there's Nashville Barrel Company. A guy named Mike Hines there is pulling single barrels, and his single barrels often are just phenomenal. And you can get them at a reasonable price, and they're one-offs. They just will be one barrel. They'd be 140 bottles, and you can walk right in there in Nashville and get great whiskey. Otherwise, I mean, I have some like you could get George T. Stagg Batch 7, 2017. That's also just a complete treasure. But I'll start with 4. But
So,
OWA and Mark Carter Americans and those sorts of things, yeah.
And what's how do you drink them? What's your preferred do you do old fashioned? You just go straight whiskey? What's the
One ice cube.
One ice cube? No.
So it used to be one ice cube, then it was a half an ice cube, and now it's neat. But if you're gonna yeah, if you're gonna make an old fashioned, I would just get a more daily drinker rye. And I typically don't make an old fashioned out of a great whiskey. But but I just do a daily drinker rye. Yeah.
Super helpful. I love it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Todd.
Right,
That's a good way to end, I think, on bourbon. That's a great way to end.
Yeah, it was really great to have you here. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you, guys.
And that wraps up today's episode of Sages Stories. You can view the show notes for any links to sites we referenced today. Visit sages.org for membership information and for the most recent news from our society. Follow us on Twitter at @sages_updates. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. See you again next time, and remember, you can't spell minimally invasive surgery without SAGES.